Chariot. Okay, since there are a lot of newcomers, I'll just take a few minutes to give you a background about Gita Ashram Malaysia. So our headquarters is in Delhi, Gita Ashram Delhi, and it was set up by our Gurudev, as you can see statue there, Harihar Dev Maharaj. He attained Samadhi in March year 2000. But he set up more than 100 over Gita ashrams around the world. And Gita Ashram Malaysia is the first Gita ashram to be set up out of India. So what do we do here? Gurudev's message was just one: spread the teachings of the Gita. He believed very strongly in the message of the Gita, and he always said that the Gita has the solution to all mankind's problems. So whenever anybody went to see Gurudev and told them all their problems, he only told them two words: Gita Pado, meaning read the Gita. The answers are all there. So, what are the activities we do here? Every Tuesday, we have the chanting of Hanuman Chalisa from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And there are 5 rounds of Hanuman Chalisa which are chanted. Then on Saturdays, we have our Gita class, interactive Gita class. Now, feel free to ask questions. If anytime I'm saying something you don't understand, you want clarification, please put up your hand and ask questions. That is the purpose of these interactive classes. And every Sunday, we have our usual satsang from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So, where we recite 7 verses of the Gita, explanation of the 7 verses is given in English, and then there are some bhajan sung. And simultaneously, while the satsang is going on in the hall here, behind we have the children's classroom. We have about 50 children from the ages of 5 to 15 who are enrolled in these classes. They are taught simple verses of the Gita, some stories about Krishna and things like that. Okay? So if you have any young children, you would like them to be exposed to this knowledge, you can contact the teachers of the Gita class. Now, apart from that, we also celebrate all the major festivals: Navratri, Shivratri, Ganesh Chaturthi, etc., Krishna Janmashtami. And our major program is in the months of November, December, when over 18 days we have different speakers. In each day, one chapter of the Gita is explained. So there is a thorough explanation of one chapter of the Gita. It starts on the first day up to the 18th day. And the 18th day is the calculated date when 5,100 years ago, from that date, Lord Krishna delivered his Gita, Bhagavad Gita sermon to Arjuna. So that's why every day, every year, we celebrate that as Gita Jayanti. It's an 18-day program. Now, how do you keep in touch with all this? As you leave the hall, on your right, you will see the notice board. There is a number there. We have a WhatsApp broadcast group. So you just send your number and your name to that group. Tell them you want to be added, and you will be kept updated with all the activities of the ashram. Okay? Now, having said that, we will now proceed on with the Bhagavad Gita. Now, just to understand, how many of you read the Bhagavad Gita daily or frequently? Okay, fair enough. So now, before we go into the study of the Bhagavad Gita, many times people ask this question that there are so many scriptures in Sanatana Dharma. I won't refer to our religion as Hinduism, because the real description of our religion is called Sanatana Dharma. Dharma meaning the righteous path, Sanatana meaning the eternal righteous path. So in Sanatana Dharma, we are given many scriptures. The question is, why then we don't study all the scriptures? Why should we just focus on Bhagavad Gita? Once we understand how, what we call, how important is the Bhagavad Gita and the relevance to today's life and how it connects to the other scriptures, it is actually a condensation of all the scriptures that you have in Sanatana Dharma. So if you refer to your notes, which I think all of you who are in the chat group, anybody who is not in the chat group, oh, it's 2 of you, 3 of you. Oh, can you please ask maybe the person sitting next to you to share? Then later you can join in, and then I'll be sending out messages on the chat group. So here you will see the first, um, what we call this figure which I sent out, the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma. First, we have to understand the scriptures and how they are connected to the Gita. Okay? So, first of all, we know that the oldest scriptures are the four Vedas: Rig Ved, Samaved, Yajurved, Atharvaved. Now, it is wrongly said that Ved Vyasa is not the author of the Gita, author of the Vedas. He is the compiler of the Vedas. Because the Vedas, there's no known author, and I will explain. You see, let us go back to the very dawn of history, because Vedas are the most oldest scriptures given to us. So they were transmitted at the very dawn of history. And we go back to the early man when he came to this earth. He didn't know anything about God. All he wanted to do was how to survive in this environment. So when he looked around, what did he see? Rain, water, fire, sun, moon, etc. And these are the elements that supported him, that gave him life, gave him nourishment. So, in the early part of the Vedas, the Lord Himself transmitted transmitted his what we call lessons to selected individuals, and they sang praises of all these elements. So, for example, they wanted to thank the sun for giving them the sunlight, they thank the waters, thank the fire. So, in the initial part of the Vedas are called as Samhitas. You look at your notes, you see that the word Samhitas is there. What are Samhitas? Samhitas are what we call praises or hymns in praise of the different elements. So you have praises to Agni Devata, the fire god, praises to Surya Devata, sun god, etc. So that's why the Vedas fall under scriptures known as Shrutis. Shrutis means those which were heard through the ear. So they were transmitted, they were heard by individuals. These individuals memorized these verses and they transmitted on to their children or to other people. Now, as they kept on singing hymns in praise of all the elements, what is the next thing they wanted to do? They wanted to make offerings to all these elements. So then came the second part of the Vedas known as the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas required a Brahmin priest, and the priest will tell the person what are the offerings to be made, what are the mantras to be chanted. So instead of just chanting mantras, now there were offerings made to all these various deities. So they started getting names now: Surya Devta, Agni Devta, Vayu Devta, etc. Vayu Devta is wind, Varuna Devta is water. So they started offering things. Now, the rituals that you perform nowadays when you move into a new house, when you start a new business, when you get married, when a child is born, they all come from the Samhita portion, the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. So all the rituals are there. For whatever happiness you require from the world, happy family, good business, healthy, healthy body, all come from the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. Then slowly, as the early man progressed, they started getting older, they started reflecting on all these rituals. And then we come to the third part of the Vedas, which is called the Aranyakas. Aranyakas come from the root word Aranya, which means forest. So as they retired into the forest, they started contemplating on what are these rituals? Why do we perform all these rituals? So Aranyakas contain a lot of contemplation. And finally, we come to the last or the end part of the Vedas. This is known as Vedanta. If you hear this word commonly, Vedanta is two words: Veda, Anta. Anta means at the end, Veda means these four Vedas. So that end portion of the Vedas is called Vedanta. It is also known by another name called Upanishads. So I'm sure you would have heard this word called Upanishads. What are Upanishads? Upanishads contain three words: Upa, Upanishad. Upanishad. Upa means near, ni means down, shad means sit. So near, down, sit. Meaning what? The students or the disciples sat at the feet of his master and obtained the highest knowledge. So Upanishads don't talk about rituals or things like that. They talk about directly knowledge about Brahman, the highest supreme entity, the supreme consciousness which is known as Brahman, Brahma Vidya. So this is how our religion progressed. Now you can see a little bit of difference between the first part of the Vedas, the Samhitas and the Brahmanas, and the end portion which is known as Upanishads. So what is the difference here? If you just go to the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 3, just refer to chapter 3, verse 3. If you see that in chapter 3, verse 3, Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that for those of you who have this book, it is I think on page 60. Okay? Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, in this world, Loke Asmin, in this world. Now, when Lord Krishna says in this world, what does he mean? See, whenever we read these verses, we must question. We must not just blindly read and blindly just accept. Now, Krishna has made a statement here in this world. So, what do you mean by in this world? Which world are you talking about? Don't be afraid to answer. Okay? It's an interactive class. Otherwise, you all fall asleep then. You won't hear anything. So, what does he mean by in this world? Huh? In his heart. Okay, something like that. But what does it really mean? See, we are told in our scriptures that there are 14 lokas, 14 worlds. Okay? Right now, you and I are on the middle plane, which is known as Bhuloka. Okay? Above Bhuloka, there are 6 lokas. Collectively, they are known as the heavenly lokas, Swarga lokas. Bhuva, Swaha, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satya. So why are there 6 lokas, heavenly lokas? One day you will go there, you might meet me there also. I'll meet you there. So you should know why 6 heavenly lokas. Why not just one heavenly loka? He's given you 6 heavenly lokas. See, the more great deeds you do here, the more good deeds you do here, the higher up you go in the lokas. The higher up you go in the lokas, the more enjoyments are there. See, first loka, you only get 50 TV channels. You go to another loka, you get 100 TV channels. Higher you go, you get supermarkets, emporiums 24 hours open. So more benefits are there. But how many of you like to go to the heavenly lokas? Nobody wants to go to heavenly lokas. It's very dangerous. No, see, we must understand one thing. These heavenly lokas, which will be explained later in chapter 9, they are only temporary places for us to go. Because of our good deeds, we accumulate certain punyam. And in order to exhaust this punyam, you will go to the heavenly lokas. But after you've exhausted these punyams, you will come back to earth. So this is not the final destination. Okay? Of course, when you come back to earth, because of your punyam, you'll get a better birth. Okay? You may be born as Bill Gates in the next life, who knows? So these are the heavenly lokas. Then below earth, you have 7 hell, planets of hell, Naraka lokas. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Rasatala, Mahatala, Patala. The lowest is Patala. Again, the lower you go, the more bad deeds you do, you'll go lower. The lower you go, the greater the punishment. But after suffering all that, you come back again to earth. So when Krishna says, Loke Asmin, in this loka, meaning Bhuloka, because why? Only in Bhuloka, whatever actions that a human being does, will accumulate punyam and papam. If you go to Swarga Loka, whatever good deeds you do there, you don't get additional punyam. Even if you do bad things there, you don't get any additional punishment. Same as the Naraka Lokas also. Okay? So in this Loka is very important. It's called Karma Bhumi. Every action you do, there's a reaction. Action, there's a reaction. So he's telling us, Loke Asmin, in this world, in this Bhuloka, I have given two parts. Uh, what you call Pura Prokta Mayanaga, I've given Dvivida Nishta. I mean, two parts are given. So, for us, for any human being to attain salvation, the Lord says there are only two parts. What are the two parts? Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. So, there's only two parts. What is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is all the actions that we do, the prayers that we do, the rituals that we do. Dhanam, we give charity, we do seva, all these fall under Karma Yoga. And what is the other part? Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. Now, this is the most important thing we have to understand. Because we have been brought up, you and me, we have been brought up in the performance of rituals, prayers, doing dhanam, doing seva, which is all very good. But what is the purpose? Can anybody tell me all the dhanam that you do, the rituals that you do, seva that you do, what is the purpose of it? Huh? You get good karmas, you go to heaven, you come back again. You do good karmas, you go to heaven, you come back again. But that is not the ultimate destination. So, what is the real purpose of karma yoga? Sorry? Huh? Purify the mind. How do we know that? Go to chapter 5, verse 11. See, all the answers are there. It's in the Gita. It's for us to go through and understand this. I'm just giving you now very overall. Later, we'll go more in depth into these verses. Chapter 5, verse number 11. What does it say there? The karma yogis, meaning those who are involved in the path of action, who are doing seva, dhanam, rituals, etc. Karma yogis perform action with their senses, mind, intellect, and body. But very important, how should the action be performed? Shaking off attachment. One should not perform these actions for the sake of getting recognition for them. See, I'll give you two examples. I'll give you example. Supposing one person goes to a temple to donate money, and when he gives the donation, he tells the office manager, I'm donating 1000 ringgit. My name is Mr. So and so. Every Sunday, you please announce what a great devotee of Lord I am, how much money I've donated to the temple. That is one. Second person goes, he gives donation of 1000 ringgit, quietly he puts in the box and he prays to Lord and he walks away. Now, both actions are good or bad? Good. One action is called karma, the other action is called karma yoga. I'll explain. Karma means any action done with selfish intention, done with ego. But that same action, the action doesn't change. The same action, when you surrender to the Lord, you say when you're giving the donation, oh Lord, thank you for making me an instrument to help the world. So that action done of purity becomes karma yoga. So what is the difference now between karma and karma yoga? Karma is action. Karma yoga is that action which unites us with the Lord and that purifies our mind. So here he says, the karma yogis perform action only with their senses, mind, intellect, and body, shaking off attachment for the sake of, here the Sanskrit word is used is Atma Suddhaye. So be very careful about this word Atma. Atma, as you read the Bhagavad Gita, does not mean soul. Atma has got many, many meanings. In this context, Atma means mind. Suddhaye means purification. It purifies the mind. How does it purify the mind? It removes ego, anger, greed, lust, jealousy. Every action you dedicate to the Lord purifies you. So the purpose of performing good actions, good deeds, is not for the sake of getting merits, but is for the sake of self-purification. So the attitude must be correct. Your action is good, but if you don't correct your attitude, then your action becomes tainted. Okay. So coming back again to chapter 3, verse 3, he says, I've given two parts. So now karma yoga is to purify your mind. Then what is Jnana Yoga? Jnana Yoga it contains three steps. The first step, Jnana Yoga, means path of knowledge. Okay, Karma Yoga is path of action, Jnana Yoga is path of knowledge. So what does Jnana Yoga consist of? Three steps. Sravanam, meaning listen, listen, listen. You listen to spiritual talk. Okay. Nowadays, you're very lucky. You have this internet. You can go into the internet, YouTube. There are thousands of Swamijis giving lectures. So make it a point to go and listen and read. So the first part is listening, but the second part very important, because as you come here every Saturday, you listen. Then you go back. What do? Close your book up nicely, all your notepads nicely. You put in the drawer, and then until Friday, you realize, oh my God, Saturday there's the next class. Better I take out my notes and start reading. So listening is not important. Not doesn't stop there. You must come to the second part called mananam, meaning reflection. So what is mananam? What is reflection? You must write down. In fact, the best thing I can tell you is when you read a verse, just do one verse of the Gita. How many verses are there in the Gita? 700 verses. If you do one verse a day, in 2 years you cover the whole Gita. But what you do when you read one verse, you take a notepad, you write your own understanding of that verse. And whatever you don't understand, you write questions. And when you write questions, you start asking for the answers. You start searching for the answers. That is mananam, reflection. So mananam. And after that, what happens? Vididhyasanam, which means you put it into practice. So you hear, you reflect, you absorb the knowledge, then you put it into practice. So, how is now Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are not two separate parts? Karma Yoga will lead you to Jnana Yoga. When your mind is purified by Karma Yoga, there will arise in you a thirst for knowledge, and that will bring you to Jnana Yoga. How do we know this? Sorry to confuse you all, but I have to take you through few verses. Chapter 4, verse 33. Chapter 4, verse 33. This is very important for us to understand why we are doing rituals, why we are doing prayers, why we go on pilgrimage. All that is to purify the mind. And then what happens? Chapter 4, verse 33, Krishna says, just we'll take the last two lines of the Sanskrit text. Sarva karma akilam jnani parisamapyate. Krishna is telling Arjuna, Sarva karma, all your actions, akilam, without exception, parisamapyate, culminate in jnana, in knowledge. So the purpose of you to do karma yoga, purify your mind, is to bring you to the path of knowledge. And it is knowledge that will lead you to moksha. So we need to bridge the gap between our rituals, our actions, pure actions that we do. We need to bridge that with Jnana Yoga. What we are doing here is Jnana Yoga. But you should not stop Karma Yoga. So it goes hand in hand. As you purify yourself, you have more thirst for knowledge. You gain more knowledge, you carry on with your rituals and your, what we call your charity and all this seva and all that. So the thing is here, that's why there are four portions in the Vedas. The Samhitas and the Brahmanas are the Karma Kanda portion, the Karma Yoga portion. In Vedas, they are called Karma Kanda. In Bhagavad Gita, it's called Karma Yoga. There's no difference. Okay? And Upanishads is the Jnana Yoga portion of the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are only one part of the scriptures that we have. They contain almost 100,000 verses. That's why when people tell me, brother, Bhagavad Gita, how many verses? 700. You, 700, how to study 700? I said, no mind, go and study the Vedas, 100,000 verses. When the Lord has simplified for you the Vedas into a simple text for Bhagavad Gita with 700 verses, and you don't want to study that, okay. But the Vedas are not the only scriptures we have. We have another group of scriptures known as the Puranas. So you see in your notes again, Puranas. Okay, you would have definitely come across these Puranas. What are Puranas? They are nothing but stories. Stories about different deities. So you have Shiv Purana, which gives you a lot of stories about Lord Shiva. You have Ganesha Purana, stories about Ganesha. Krishna also has his own Purana. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam. Don't confuse with Bhagavad Gita. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam. It contains about 18,000 verses, and it talks about the life of Krishna and many other things. So, what are the Puranas? The Puranas, the longest Purana is called the Skanda Purana. It contains 81,000 verses. And some of the shorter Puranas contain about 9,000 verses. So, what are the Puranas? Puranas are basically teaching us also moral values. They're also giving us a bit of spiritual knowledge through stories. So the stories are very, you might have heard some of these fantastic stories, like I'm sure you would have heard about once Narad came to visit Lord Shiva and he brought a golden mango. And then he told the two sons of Shiva, one was Murugan and Ganesh, right? Murugan and Ganesh, right? He said, who goes around the world 3 times will get this golden mango. So what did Murugan do? You all know the story, right? He got on the peacock and he went around the world 3 times. And what did Ganesha do? When his parents sit down and he went around the parents 3 times. So you might say, what is this story? Ganesha going, this fellow going on a peacock, going around the world like this, like it. But what is the purpose of the story? You remember the story, but you forget the lesson. The story is to attract your attention, to teach you a lesson. What is the lesson? Parents are the center of your life, right? So, same way, all the stories in the Puranas are very bombastic stories. But the idea is to capture your attention and then to tell you a moral story or teach you a lesson. So, these are the Puranas. There are 18 Mahapuranas and 18 Upapuranas, major and minor Puranas. All have been written by Vyasa. Okay? So, that is one section of the Puranas. You have certain Puranas like Garud Purana, which talk about death, about rituals to perform during death, what happens to the soul after death, how many days journey it goes, and all that kind of things. So that is one section. Now we come to the third section of the scriptures, which is in your notes there. It's called the Itihasas. Itihasas means history or that actually happened. That's the translation of the word Itihasas. So there are two Itihasas. One is called Ramayana, which has 24,000 verses, story of Lord Rama. Okay, if you know Lord Rama and Sita and he went after Ravan and all that story. And then the second one, and Ramayana is written by sage Valmiki. Okay, and Mahabharata, which is written by Vyasa, contains 100,000 verses, which is a story about the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Okay. So all these again, they are stories that teach us moral lessons to teach us something about life. Now, so many scriptures you have, Mahabharata, Ramayana, you have what you call what you call this Puranas, etc., Vedas, Upanishads. You have. So now we come to where does the Bhagavad Gita fit into all this? Okay, so the Bhagavad Gita is embedded in the Mahabharata. It is extracted from the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, there is a book called Bhishma Parva. Parva means book, about this character called Bhishma. Inside this Bhishma Parva, chapters 25 to 42, 18 chapters are separately extracted and given to us as Bhagavad Gita because they contain the sacred dialogue of Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So that's why what we're studying today, this text is part of the Mahabharata. So we should also roughly understand a little bit of Mahabharata. But what is the most difficult thing when we start the study of the Gita? And this is why where I also was very confused when 30 years back I wanted to study the Gita. I took the Gita book, opened to chapter 1, verse 1, and started reading about all these warriors, battlefield, this, that. I got utterly confused. But the thing is, we miss the allegory of why this battlefield is there. So now with this understanding of the Gita, let us of all the scriptures, now let us delve into the Bhagavad Gita. Okay? Into the first chapter of the Gita. So here now we look at the first chapter of the Gita. Now first a few things about the Gita that we should know, Bhagavad Gita. It contains 18 chapters and 700 verses. It's a dialogue basically between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Now, every chapter of the Gita, the title of every chapter of the Gita contains the word yoga. So, first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, chapter 2 Sankhya Yoga, chapter 3 Karma Yoga, and so forth. Okay, every chapter has got the word yoga. So, first of all, let us understand what is the meaning of this word yoga. Because when the word yoga comes in mind, what do we think? People sitting down, doing exercise, folding their legs, turning one foot here and all that. But yoga has got many, many meanings again. In the context of the Gita, yoga comes from the root word yuj, which means to unite. So unite what? Unite our soul with the Supreme Soul. So every chapter is an exercise on how to unite with that Supreme Soul. That Supreme Soul is called Brahman. Okay? Now, don't get confused. A lot of people think that if I study Gita, I must only worship Krishna. No, it is not like that. The Bhagavad Gita is Brahma Vidya. It is leading you to knowledge of Brahman. Okay? Regardless of whichever deity you worship, Bhagavad Gita gives you the knowledge of how to reach Brahman, how to be one with Brahman. So don't get confused on that. Okay? So first of all, um, every chapter is called yoga. Okay? Now, chapter 1 is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which means that Vishada means depression or delusion. So, this great warrior called Arjuna came to the battlefield and fell into a stage of depression. We will see why that happened. And then slowly he surrenders to Lord Krishna on the battlefield. And in a series of questions and answers, Krishna brings him out of his delusion until the last chapter 18 is called Sannyasa Yoga. Sannyasa means liberation. So that means think when we fall into our deepest depression, into our deepest delusion, where do we turn to? Where do we turn to? God. We turn our mind to God. So, how from delusions a person can be uplifted and brought to liberation? But one very important quality must be there. If we want to turn to God and seek His help, one very important quality must be there. What is that? Surrender, exactly. And this is what Arjuna did in a very famous verse in the Gita, chapter 2, verse 7, which we can all use also as a prayer verse. In the morning, say our prayers, we surrender to the Lord, and we go out and do our work. Okay? Now, that surrender verse is here in chapter 2, verse 7. We just take a very quick look at it. Okay? So I'll just recite the Sanskrit text. Those of you who know can just join me. So remember, it's a surrender verse. We just go in front of the Lord and we surrender to Him. Okay? Karpanyadosho स्वभाव प्रज्ञामि त्वां धर्म samudacheta Yakshreshanishchitan bruhitan me Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapanam. So who's Krishna and Arjuna? Krishna at the beginning of the battle was Arjuna's charioteer, right? Arjuna was the master of the chariot and Krishna was his charioteer. So who was the boss? Arjuna was the boss. He told Krishna where to take his chariot. But now in chapter 2, verse 7, he surrenders to Krishna. He says, Shishyas te aham. I am your Shishya, I am your disciple. Prapanam, I am seeking my shelter under you. So then the relationship changes. Krishna is no more his charioteer. Krishna now becomes his guru, and Arjuna becomes the student, the disciple. And that's when the whole journey of the Gita starts. So I will not go deeply into chapter 1 because the reason being that the teachings of Krishna only start in chapter 2, verse 11. Okay? So the teachings only start in chapter 2, verse 11, and they complete. Krishna tells his final teachings in chapter 18, verse 66. Although chapter 18 has got 78 verses, the last teachings of Krishna in verse 66. Right? So, but we will briefly go through chapter 1 to understand the setting of the war and how Arjuna fell into this state of delusion. Okay? So now, another important thing about the Gita you must understand, the Gita is 18 chapters, and according to commentators, the Gita is divided into three equal portions of 6 chapters. Chapter 1 to chapter 6 are focusing on karma yoga, the path of selfless action. Chapters 7 to 12 focus on bhakti yoga, path of devotion. And chapters 13 to 18 focus on jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. See, knowledge always comes at the end. Because first you perform actions, purify your mind, have devotion for the Lord, then only you come to knowledge. So karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga also. And also the other way of looking at the Bhagavad Gita is it is also divided into three equal sections according to the very famous prayer known as Tat Tvam Asi. Okay? Now, what is Tat Tvam Asi? The nutshell of the teachings of the Gita can be put into these three words Tat Tvam Asi. Tat means that, Tvam means you, Asi means are, that you are. So, let us look at each of these words now. When we say Tat is that, what do you mean by that? When you say that, what does the word that indicate? When you use this in the English terms, that, what does it indicate? Just in normal sense. When I say that day, that time, that person, what does it mean? It means that something which is not within your sense perception. It is not there right now. You cannot see it. Right? I say that day, that time, that person. So that refers to Brahman who is formless. He has no attributes. So Brahman is something which has no attributes, no shape, no sound, no color, beyond attributes. So that consciousness, which is all pervading everywhere, which is known as Brahman, Tvam, you are that consciousness. That is the ultimate teachings of the Gita. To understand that you are not this temporary, physical, decaying body, but you are the consciousness inside this body, which is enlivening this body. And that consciousness and Brahman are one and the same. Okay? So Tattvamasi. So how do the 18 chapters are divided? The first 6 chapters talk about Tvam, about you. Who are you? The soul. Tells us the qualities of the soul. Okay? The middle 6 chapters talk about uh, that Brahman, that consciousness. Okay, so first 6 chapters talk about you. The middle 6 chapters talk about that supreme consciousness where God will introduce Himself. You will find all the qualities of God given there. And the final six chapters talk about Asi, which means how to merge you with that Supreme Being. So Tat Tvam Asi. Okay? Now, the next thing is you must look at the prayer. You know, when we recited chapter 12, at the end of every chapter, there's this prayer. So I want you to look at the end of chapter 1. Okay? Look at the end of chapter 1. You will find that there's one prayer there which starts with the word Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat Iti. Okay, can you see that? Om Tat Sat Iti. Okay. Now, every chapter has got this prayer. It will tell you what is basically the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. So, first of all, Om Tat Sat. What is Om Tat Sat? When we recite this word, Om Tat Sat will be explained in chapter 17 as the three names of God. So, that higher supreme consciousness, if we want to connect with that, when we meditate, we use the word Om or either Om or Tat or Sat. All are the three names of that Brahman. This is explained in chapter 17. So, it says here Om Tat Sat is a prayer. After we recite the chapter, we say Om Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. What did we recited? It is Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, here comes the important part. What is the Bhagavad Gita? As I told you, we have Vedas, we have Upanishads, we have Puranas, we have Itihasas. Where does Bhagavad Gita fall under? Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu. The word Su is like an honorific title. So what is it? Su Upanishad Su. It is a Upanishad. The Bhagavad Gita is a Upanishad. It is giving us direct knowledge about Brahman. It does not talk to you about rituals or prayers or what all these things. It's a Upanishad. Okay? Therefore, it is called Brahma Vidya. Vidya means knowledge about what? Brahman, the highest supreme consciousness. At the same time, it is Yoga Shastra. What is yoga? Yoga means to unite. Shastra is a scripture. It's a scripture that teaches us how to unite with the Supreme Being. Yoga Shastra. How is it presented? Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. Samvade means it's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. Okay? And then comes the title of the chapter, which is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Chapter 2, that will change to Sankhya Yoga. And then the last part is Prathamo Adhyaya. Adhyaya means chapter, Prathamo means one, chapter 1. So that last part of the prayer will change in every chapter. The first part will remain the same. Okay? So now we understand that the Bhagavad Gita is an Upanishad. Okay? Now we come to chapter 1, verse 1. So let us understand what has happened. Here we have Dhritarashtra Uvacha, the blind king. Dhritarashtra is the blind king. He's asking his charioteer Sanjaya this question. He's saying, assemble on the sacred field of Kurukshetra, eager to fight. What did my sons and those of Pandu do? Okay? So obviously, when we read this first verse, we are totally confused because who is Dhritarashtra? Who is Sanjaya? Who are these people who are fighting on the battlefield? What is all this going on? I want to know about God. I don't want to know about his battlefield. So let us understand this. Why is the battlefield presented? See, Dhritarashtra uses two names for this battlefield. Okay, first I must relate to you the story of what happened. There are two groups of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Okay, the Pandavas are the good people, the Kauravas are the evil people, and they are cousins, they are related. So the fight was about a kingdom. They were fighting about a kingdom. The kingdom originally belonged to the Pandavas. The Kauravas wrongfully snatched away this kingdom by cheating the Pandavas in a game of dice and promised them that after 12 years they would return back the kingdom to them. After 12 years, they refused to return the kingdom to them. So the war was called the Great Mahabharata War. Okay? Now the two armies are facing each other. Okay? Kauravas are the most evil people. They've done tremendous bad deeds, a lot of bad actions against the Pandavas. So now the war is called. And Arjuna comes to the battlefield. He's ready to fight. He's got Krishna as his charioteer. And he sees in front of him that who are the people he has to fight. On the opposite side are all his relatives, all his friends, his relatives, his gurus. And suddenly he asks himself a question: is it worth for me to fight and kill all these people just to get my kingdom back? So he falls into a state of depression, confusion. He doesn't know what to do. Shall I do my duty as a soldier, or shall I do my duty as a soldier to fight this war, or shall I just leave and run away from this battlefield and let them have the kingdom? So that is a conflict. Now the question we ask ourselves: why this battlefield? Why do we have this whole sermon of the Gita delivered in the battlefield? When Arjuna falls into a state of delusion, he surrenders to Krishna, and Krishna delivers the whole Bhagavad Gita in the middle of the battlefield. So now the question is, why the battlefield? Why not, you say, Krishna giving the sermon in an ashram or in the banks of a river, somewhere quiet in a cave? Why pick a battlefield? Sorry. So what does a battlefield represent? Yes, you can say the mind. There's one very good way of looking at it. So what is this battle that goes on in our mind? What is the battle that goes on in our mind every day? Huh? Between good and evil, between good thoughts and right thoughts, isn't it? There's a story told in Ramayana that when the last day when Ravan was defeated on the battlefield, and he was not dead yet, he was lying there about to die. Rama was told to go and get some advice from him, because Ravan was a very educated person. He was a devotee of Lord Shiva. So Rama goes to him and asks him, "Give me some last words. No, I want going back. I'm going to look after my kingdom. Can you give me some advice?" So Ravan told him, "When good thoughts come to your mind, do them immediately. Okay, whenever good thought comes to your mind, go and do it immediately. When a woman tells you to do anything, don't do it." Too many ladies here, I got to explain. Otherwise, I'll get clobbered. See, our scriptures speak to us in very allegorical ways. When they say something, we must not take a literal meaning of that. So, what was Ravan trying to tell him? When good thoughts come to your mind, do it immediately. Okay, we can understand. When a woman tells you something, say, don't do it. Think about it first. Because what caused Ravan's destruction? Surpanaka, his sister, right? She told him about this beautiful lady called Sita. You must have her as your queen. And he went to abduct her. And because he abducted her, it caused his destruction. So, in a nutshell, what is he saying? When good thoughts come to your mind, do it immediately. When bad thoughts come to your mind, hold on, think about it, give it some thought first before you act upon it. So, same way, this battlefield which is in our mind is basically every day we face these challenges. There are so many attractions in this world, so many distractions in this world. We want to stay on the right path, but there's so much of confusion out there in the world. So, the most very basic, I would say, the whole fundamental teachings of the Gita actually, to me, come in chapter 6, verse number 5 and 6. Just have a look at that. Chapter 6, verse 5 and 6. That is the whole crux of the Gita there. Page 115, for those who have this book. The whole fundamental teachings are crystallized in these two verses. Krishna says, let a man lift himself by himself. Now, let him not degrade himself, for the self alone is the friend of the self, and the self alone, you read this, you'll say, I get headache already, I got to go back. Now, what is this self? This self is nothing but your mind. Okay, as I said, the word Atma has got many meanings. In this context, the word Atma used here means mind. Now, what is trying to tell you this? Your mind is your greatest friend and your mind is your greatest enemy. What type of mind is your greatest friend? The mind which is filled with good thoughts, filled with divine thoughts, filled with devotion of God, right? That mind becomes your greatest friend. Filled with the right knowledge, equipped with right knowledge, that mind will guide you in the right way. Which mind is your greatest enemy? That mind which is filled with anger, greed, ego, jealousy, pride. So he says in the next verse 6, for one who has conquered his lower self, meaning who has conquered all his negative qualities like ego, greed, pride, anger, the mind becomes your friend. But if you fail to conquer all these negative qualities, it becomes your greatest enemy. It will bring you to your downfall. So that's why the battlefield is basically nothing but a battlefield in our mind. The Kauravas, the evil people, represent all the bad qualities that are there. The Pandavas represent all the pure qualities that are there. And Arjuna's chariot is parked right in between the battlefield, which means that chariot represents what? See, the chariot is parked here in the battlefield. One side are the good people, one side the bad people. What does a chariot represent? What does it represent? It represents our body. See, there is a Upanishad called the Katha Upanishad. In this Katha Upanishad, there is a section called the Rath Kalpana. Rath means chariot. Kalpana means image of the chariot. This whole Krishna Arjuna chariot is explained beautifully. The allegory. What is it? Chariot is our body. The 5 horses pulling the chariot are the 5 senses: the eyes, the nose, the ear, the tongue, and the skin. Okay? The 5 senses are connected to a what they call that the rain. Rain. What does the rain represent? The mind. The rain represents the mind. So senses are controlled by the mind, and the mind, the reins are in the hands of who? Lord Krishna. Krishna represents the intellect, right? So what does it mean to us here? Senses must be controlled by mind, mind must be controlled by the intellect. Now, very simple example I'll give you. Now I'm talking, supposing you are listening to me with your ears, right? But supposing there's some nice food being cooked behind and the fragrance comes into the hall, then your nose picks up the fragrance of the food. Then where does your mind go? When will this fellow stop talking quickly? I want to go and eat some nice food. So what has happened? Your senses have dragged your mind into something else. So that's why Adi Shankaracharya says the senses of a human being in Viveka Chudamani, he writes beautifully. You will hear a lot about Adi Shankaracharya. He says the senses of a human being are more deadlier than the bite of a cobra. You understand that? The senses of a human being are more deadlier than the bite of a cobra. Why? You've got to appreciate the genius of these people, how they think. How can the senses of a human being be more deadlier than the bite of a cobra? A bite of a cobra can kill you. Huh? Mind also can kill. See, cobra, in order to kill you, is got to come in contact with you, sink his fangs into your whatever bloodstream and inject the poison in. Senses, you see something far away, a nice, delicious chocolate cake. I can't use other example, no? It's a religious class. Okay. So you see a nice chocolate cake from far away. You say, very nice chocolate cake. Then you walk away. Now, where is the chocolate cake now? In your mind. So now your mind says, should I have it? Should I have it? Then it starts to say, you should have it. You should have it. Then you have had it. Because then you have to go back and buy the chocolate cake, right? So now, you see, the senses must be controlled by the mind. How do I make the mind control the senses? How do I make the mind control the senses? The mind has got to be fortified with Bhakti Yoga. So, with devotion to the Lord, the mind must be fortified. So, understand one thing about the mind. You cannot suppress the mind. If you have wrong thoughts coming into your mind and you keep on suppressing, How long is it going to last? Yet at the same time, you cannot give in to the wrong thoughts. That also is destructive. So what do? You can't give in to wrong thoughts. You can't suppress wrong thoughts for a long time. What do? You must divert the mind. So how do I divert the mind? That's why we have budget, why we have mantras. What is the meaning of mantra? Mantra means man antara, that which subdues the mind. So anytime you're driving and then suddenly your thought comes back to something, 1928, the fellow called me a donkey. Suddenly your mind goes back somewhere, right? What do? Immediately you divert your mind. You start singing a bhajan. You start reciting your mantra. So you pull your mind slowly back to the positive side. So mind must be fortified with uh, bhakti yoga. But mind itself is weak. Above the mind is the intellect. So what is the difference? Many people don't understand what is the difference between mind and intellect. You have a mind. How many minds have you got? Are you sure? There's only one. So the mind is subject to likes and dislikes. Okay, that is the difference between mind and intellect. Intellect is subject to right and wrong. So just give you a simple example. A diabetic, you put a plate of sweets in front of him. Mind will say what? Go ahead, eat, never mind. Tomorrow we'll see. What happens to your sugar level. What will intellect say? You better hold on. Yesterday you already had enough sweets. You better control yourself. So mind is fortified with bhakti yoga. Intellect must be fortified with jnana yoga, knowledge. So once your mind, your intellect is fortified with the right knowledge, it controls the mind, which is also fortified with bhakti. It will in turn control the senses. So the chariot represents the body, the horses represent senses, the rain represents the mind, Krishna represents the intellect. So as long as your intellect is in charge of your body, your mind, your chariot will go in smoothly through the battlefield of life. Okay? So that is the chariot allegory. Now I'll just end with a little bit of uh, what we call explanation on verse 1, and then we'll come back next week and look at the rest of the verses. So let's look at verse 1. Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra. Now, on in the battlefield of Mahabharata, the battle started after the 10th day. On the 10th day of the battle, this verse starts on the 10th day of the battle. I'll tell you why. On the 10th day of the battle, Mahabharata battle was 18 days. But on the 10th day, a very significant thing happened. Arjuna shot arrows to Bhishma Pita, and Bhishma Pita fell on the bed of arrows. He lay there, he did not die until the last day of the battle. He lay on the bed of arrows until the after the Mahabharata battle. So when Sanjaya, who was at the battlefield, he saw this, he was shocked because he was shocked how could Arjuna shoot arrows into Bhishma Pita. So he rushed back to Hastinapura. Hastinapura in today's is known as Delhi. Old days it was known as Hastinapura. So he rushed back to Hastinapura and he told the blind king that Bhishma Pita has fallen on the bed of arrows. Arjuna has shot him down. So now this king is very fearful because his children, the Kauravas, he knows they've done a lot of evil things and they are fighting a battle with the Pandavas on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he asked this question to Sanjaya. He says, Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra. Kshetre is any type of field. We call it Kshetre. Now, very important to note this why the word Kshetre is used. Again, what does Kshetre represent? What does this field represent? In chapter 13, Krishna will elaborate, but I'll just tell you in short. You see, if you have an agriculture field, Kshetre normally refers to a field of agriculture. What type of crop you get from the field will depend on what type of seed you put, what type of cannot hear, okay, what type of seed you put, what type of fertilizer you put, what type of sunshine you get, what type of rain you get, right? So now what does this field represent? Again, very allegorical. Kshetri, what does it represent? It represents back again our mind, right? Meaning, what type of thoughts you put in this mind will be the results of your action. If you put in good thoughts, you will have good actions. And what do the sun and the rain, which affect the crops, represent? If you invoke the blessings of the Lord blesses you, also your actions will be good. So, Dharmakshetra means the land of Dharma. This fight was taking place on a piece of land called Dharmakshetra. Why was it called Dharmakshetra? Because many sadhus, many priests came to this land to do meditation, to do prayers and rituals. So this whole land was charged with dharma, with very positive vibes. So that's why the king was very frightful that he knew that his sons are going to lose, they're going to die in this battle. And we all know how many soldiers were there on the battlefield. This was a terrible war. We all know how many soldiers were there on the battlefield. Just take a wild guess. 4 million. 4 million soldiers on the battlefield. After the 18-day battle, how many people survived? How many people survived? 4 million soldiers on the battlefield. 10 people survived. Everybody died on the battlefield. So you can imagine the amount of death and destruction on the battlefield. All because of what? Because of one man's ego, Duryodhana, the eldest child of the king, blind king Dhritarashtra. He refused to back down. He wanted to fight all the way. So, Dharmakshetra. So, if you notice, the first word of the Gita starts with the word Dharma. Do you know what is the last word of the Gita, chapter 18, verse 78? Mama. You put Dharma, Mama together, that is the whole message of the Gita, meaning my righteous path. That is what Gita is teaching us. It is teaching us what is the right way to live this life. Okay? So, Dharmakshetra and Kurukshetra, because this land belonged to a king called Kuru. So Dhritarashtra is asking, on this land of Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta Yuyutsava, assemble desiring to fight, Mamaka, my sons, meaning the Kauravas and the Pandavas, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya, what are they doing? What did they do? So please tell me. So the first chapter deals a little bit about the war, and as I say, after Arjuna surrenders, that's when the teachings of Krishna start in chapter 2, verse 11. So when we come next week, we will briefly have a look at chapter 1, and then we'll go on into chapter 2. Now, are there any questions at this stage? Or if you go back and you think of anything, you can always come back next week also and ask. Okay, we'll therefore end with the prayer. वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं. Thank you. Hari Om.